the behavior of the leaders is far more important than modeling the desired outcomes.
I absolutely agree because there's so many companies you can walk into, and part of the values is either creativity or curiosity or innovation. And then you look around, and you're like, where is it?
Meet Lai-DuMone, founder and CEO of Worksmart Advantage. She empowers leaders and teams to think differently, embrace experimentation, and turn bold ideas into action through her unique creative integration methodologies. She's also a creative keynote speaker and the author of What If Pigs Can Fly? A practical guide to follow your curiosities.
I regularly hear in terms of AI coming around that it suppresses creativity. What are your thoughts around the near and midterm future in the work that you're doing and the place of creativity?
I do use AI to help me filter my thoughts, help me expand my thoughts. Creativity is so innately human. Creativity is something that's always been part of who I am. And I put it aside for many years to pursue the corporate jobs and promotions, all of that.
What's the worst professional advice you've ever received?
When I first started my business, people said, don't ever discount.
Welcome to Bet on People, a podcast where we explore the decisions behind human-centered leadership and why betting on people isn't just good for people, it's smart business. I'm Keegan Evans, executive coach and founder of Euda, and my guest today is Lai-DuMone, founder and CEO of Worksmart Advantage. She helps organizations unlock innovation through her creative integration, trademark methodologies. She's also the author of What If Pigs Can Fly? A practical guide to follow your curiosity, which tells the story of how her mother and 19 Vietnamese refugee women trailblazed what's now the $8.3 billion U.S. mannequin. Vaughn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Keegan.
It's a delight to have you here. Let's kick off where we usually like to kick off, a general leadership question. You've built your company around an idea that creativity isn't a nice to have, but it's a strategic problem-solving tool. Can you tell us a little more about what is so valuable about creativity for you?
Yeah. So for me personally, creativity is something that's always been part of who I am. And I put it aside for many years to pursue the corporate jobs and, promotions, all of that. And it's only when I brought it back into my life that I realized how important it is, not just to me, but to everyone, right? We are all innately creative. And when we're able to share that creativity in every aspect of our lives, including our work lives, it really is, like you said in your introduction, is a strategic tool, not a nice to have. So when I think about leadership, I think about how to become leaders who value creativity more.
When you said that creativity was something you always had, were there parts of you or expressions of creativity when you were younger that then you turned off or suppressed or moved away from? Or was it just something you know that was inside you that you found later?
Oh, no, I was painting and
Cool.
cutting things up, like, I tell stories about, like, my mom and dad bought me this brand new, beautiful white bunk bed, and by the end of the day, it was muraled, right? Painted mural. They used to cut up my clothing and, like, make my own clothing, paint my shoes. My creativity was artistic, like, very hands-on artistic creativity.
Was there anything that you've recognized that caused that to go inside more and be less expressive?
Absolutely. So I think for all of us in the society, the way we live, we're all, first of all, like I said before, we're all innately creative, whatever that looks like for you as a child. We all
Yeah,
understand that creativity is a way for children to learn, and that is taught out of us pretty
yeah,
quickly through
yeah.
schooling and through education as we get older. And for me, it was the same, right? Like I was very creative as a child, but then as I went to school and art became from something you did naturally in school to like, oh, it's an elective. And then there was none of it at all. And then on the other side, personal side, or more like my family life, I'm a Vietnamese refugee. My dad was a lieutenant colonel in the South Vietnamese Air Force. So when we came to this country as refugees, it was very much about, you know, doing the things you need to do to survive and to have a career versus doing the things you love. I don't know how many maybe other Vietnamese refugees or Asian guests you've had on the show, but many
Sure.
of them will tell you, that growing up, it was all about schooling, like the
Yeah,
academics of schooling. So yes, it was taught out of me very early on in life.
yeah. My kids have a white bunk bed. I could picture like the expression of and muralization of that. It brought up in me, I realized as a younger child, I don't remember thinking of myself as a creative. In fact, I remember my brother was the artistic one, and even though I played the violin and things like that, that felt more like a technical piece. And there's, oldest child, younger anxiety reasons for all of that. But your point about this creativity in all of us, and it's innate to our humanity, is so important because whatever path we come to, what I found later in life, comedy is one area that I've gone to, both stand up and improv, as so important to expressing my creativity. And also in that exploration, it comes back and feeds into how I lead and how I coach and how I interact in product design and all of those pieces to have that outlet and to have that, not even just an outlet, but an acknowledgement and an expression of self, of whole self is so important. So I love your articulation of it.
Thank you.
What have you seen in your work as any aha moments around creativity, either for yourself or for people you've worked with?
Sure. So going back to like the work I do started really well before this was when I worked in the corporate environment, I really felt like creative was missing. And so for me, what I started to do was I started to bring creativity back into my personal life. I remember getting rid of my television and getting a an easel and a giant canvas. I just started painting. And in doing that, I just felt, like it just, like, brought me back to life, and when I was working in this corporate environment, I feel like, "Well, where's the creativity in the workplace?"
Yeah.
So, by doing that, it allowed like you were saying, like, the creativity in my personal life brought more creativity into my work life, and
Yeah.
that's when I started thinking like, "Okay, well, what about creativity directly into the workplace?" And that was really the impetus of starting my business, and when I first started my business, it was this idea of bringing arts and crafts into corporate environments. I made up some random art projects. One was called Weave of Dreams, where we would write our goals down on muslin strips and make them into yarn hanging. Another was called Let Your Light Shine, where we do these like remember in elementary school you do the silhouettes of your face. So we would do silhouettes, and then people would decorate them with all of the things that made them unique.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
in my mind, this is what we would do in the corporate environment, but everyone said no to the idea, right? So, so what started
Sure.
off as like let's just bring arts and crafts in the workplace because that's what I thought would be beneficial because it helped me in my life. I really
Yeah.
like to revamp it to how do I make creativity and bringing creativity into the workplace in a way that is beneficial to the work environment, and that's
Yeah.
really the direction my work went into.
I love it. And we're going to get into a couple of the stories about the journey along the way of how you got there. But before we do it, can you tell us what is WorkSmart Advantage now? What is that? What does an experience work with you all look like?
Sure. So Worksmart Advantage, basically it's a learning and development consultancy. And what I do is I go into organizations and I teach team and leadership development all through the lens of what I call creative integration, which means all that work is done through creativity, play, curiosity, and sharing experiences. So it might be a workshop on, conflict management and resolution, but you might be building how you deal with conflict out of Legos and then talking about that. We might create an artifact at the end, like what I call a grounding rock, which is basically a painted rock that
Yep.
reminds you of how the strengths you bring to the team.
Cool.
So yes, all the soft skills you can learn in leadership development, but done through a creative lens, which I feel
Yep.
makes it more engaging in the process of, and then retainable because you have an emotional connection to it.
Yeah.
And so that is the core of my work. I also, as you mentioned, my book, What a Pigs Can Fly, I talk a lot about curiosity. So I do a lot of workshops and keynote speaking on the power of curiosity and the framework
Yep.
I share. And really where I've really moved my business to is this concept of how do I teach people to be creative leaders and use creative problem solving skills?
Yeah. I love it. We look a lot at Euda at our vision is human flourishing in the age of AI, and that's not about bolting AI into everything. It's how do humans flourish, and one of our core principles is curiosity around that. And so your emphasis on curiosity and play to unlock and enable is, I think, not just important in what a lot of people are familiar with in terms of leadership and strategic work, but crucial, essential, more important than ever going forward as the fundamental human skills that will continue to support people.
And your work is so important too, because I think the majority of people look at AI and see it in a certain way. It's definitive. It's going to take our jobs away, whatever it is. And to look at get curious about like, okay, well, how can we work together with this and give humans a place in it too?
Yeah, the central place in it, actually, we're hoping.
Yeah.
So I love that. So great work like this never comes out of wholly formed out of things. So I want to, in our normal format around decisions that you've made or lessons you've learned along on how to place people in different parts of those decisions. I'd love to hear I know that there's a point early on in WorkSmart Advantage where you maybe deprioritized people or didn't prioritize people as much as you originally would have thought in favor of traditional business decisions. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, so I guess when you say traditional business, I think of, I grew up in the '80s, graduated from MBA in 2000 and started working. And when I went to the workforce, the leader was the leader, and you just listened to the leader, right? And like you, what the leader told you to, at least in my experience, or at least how I perceived it. So when I launched Work Smart Advantage, I feel like I am the leader of this business, and my mistake in hindsight was I built the programs, I built this business around only what I was passionate about versus what my clients actually needed. So I was like, I want to bring arts and crafts into the workplace. I want to bring creativity to the workplace. And this is exactly how I want to do it. And since it's my business and since I'm the leader, this is the way it's going to be. And what I realized about that is that it wasn't the right choice because, like I said, when I first started my business, calling it craftivity events and bringing our projects like Weave of Dreams,
Sure.
nobody wanted it. So when you ask that question, for me, it was when I think about deprioritizing people, I
Mhm.
deprioritize my clients in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very a very common, very seductive point of view when I coach on and mentor entrepreneurs. It's about you figure out the problem you're trying to solve and obsess over the problem and not any one solution. So, other than people just not wanting it, was there any single point or single experience that started to turn the light bulb on for you of how you wanted to shift your approach?
A couple things. So when I continue to go back, when I started the business, it was twofold, or actually threefold. The third fold I never moved forward with. That third fold was gutting a school bus, making an arts and crafts center, and driving around and having kids' birthday parties. So if it
Oh,
wants to
cool.
steal that idea, go for it, because I'm just never going to do that. So the other two were these workshops in my backyard or my friend's art studio, where I would just promote, these workshops, and people would come individually and take the courses. And then the other part was, how do I bring this into the corporate environment? I didn't make any changes to it to bring it to the corporate environment. I just figured I would just do exactly what I'm doing in my backyard, and people would want it, and they didn't. And so the pivotal moment for me was the understanding that I need to do this differently, right? Clearly, there's a gap between what I'm offering and what's needed in the workplace. And I actually went to this networking event way back when in Santa Monica, and I met this gentleman. His name is Jason Press, and he is now an executive coach. And he was at the time, he worked in branding at the time. And we met for coffee one day, and he listened to my work, and he said, "Well, if this is what you're trying to accomplish, then you might want to rebrand and really focus on the needs of the corporate environment and how creativity can play into that." And that's exactly what I did. I went back home, I kind of sat down and came up with the name Work Smart Advantage,
Yeah.
and started thinking about how can I take all the things I've done in my past in learning development, team development, and incorporate creativity into that versus
Yeah.
trying to force arts and crafts into the workplace.
Sure. That's great. Inside of that is the meta point of continuous curiosity is the key to success. You had to stay curious to yourself, and that was curious about what's not working, what's here, and then open and curious to your branding mentors' insights, and then and learning around that. That's really powerful.
I wasn't even thinking or talking about curiosity at the time, but when I think about it, and I wasn't talking about creative leadership too, but when I look back at that time, I had to really take on all the characteristics of a creative leader, which is someone
Yeah.
who's curious, understands that all ideas matter,
Yeah.
is able to pivot and iterate, and
Yeah.
collaborate with others. So yeah, so it's interesting how even though I didn't know at the time, what I had to do was become the creative leader that I teach people to do now, to become now.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there any, light bulb moment, in that process of, "Oh, now I am onto something, I do understand it." What how did you know that you were on the right path and it clicked?
G and I make this face because it's interesting as an entrepreneur,
Uh,
as like,
of
do we
course.
ever understand that we get it? No. I feel like
Yes,
I spent
sir.
the last 10 years just throwing spaghetti at walls.
Yeah.
Um And I will say that and I still do that, and I'll tell you there was a point in my career where I was or in this business where I was like, "What am I doing here?" Like, I just keep throwing spaghetti at walls, like, never really clearly know what I'm doing, and I had another executive coach at the time tell me, "That's great, right? In my mind, it was framed as like, this is horrible. I never know exactly what I'm doing. She said, well, that's great because your work is in creativity and that's what you get to do every day. You get to create something new for and with your clients. So that reframe really helped me. And because there was no blueprint for this work, right? So like, I made up this job about bringing creativity to the workplace. There were for a while there was like, "Is this working? Right? Is this making a difference? Is this having any impact?" And I would have tastes of the impact where people would tell me, "What you do is, you can help me, do X, Y, and Z, help me strategize," whatever it was on an individual basis. But another aha moment for me was about I have to say almost 6 years ago now, after I became a LEGO Serious Play facilitator, we can get into
Yeah.
that later
I
too.
definitely want to hear more about that.
I was introduced to this organization called the Honor Foundation in San Diego, and it's an organization that helps special force operators like Navy SEALs, Marine Raiders, Green Berets transition from military to civilian careers. And they were interested in bringing Lego Serious Play into their program. So I raised my hand for it. I got selected, and I went down there, and I teach one class every quarter on transition night, where we use these creative methodologies to look at what's next for these men and women, right? What's next for your future, rather and really using curiosity and creativity to formulate that. It was really in doing that and seeing the impact that it's had that made me realize this. Like I say this in jest, but truly, if it's good enough for a Navy SEAL, it's good enough for you, right?
I think it's a, I would argue it's a common stereotype that when we think of Navy SEALs, creative is not necessarily the first, at least artistic creative is not necessarily the first thing we think of. And that flows very nicely into your worldview that everyone is creative. Was there great stories in terms of like a SEAL or a Raider, just it really clicking what's the story of surprise in that process for you?
So, I mean, what surprised was the number one what surprised me is that all veterans are not 80-year-old men from
Yeah.
Vietnam. The Vietnam era. Um, so that was shocking to me. The first time I walked in this room and like literally in walked 40 Navy SEALs in their prime, and I had Legos all over the table. I was like, "Oh no, this is not gonna go well." But it did go well, and 6 years later, I'm still there every quarter. It doesn't surprise me anymore. What surprised me about creativity in that environment and in any environment I go into is it doesn't matter how skeptical people are and when they walk in and see art supplies, Legos, rocks, markers on the table, they always by the end come around. And it's those ones that are most skeptical that I'm like, put the Lego down, it's time to go home. Right? Because it speaks to what we talked about earlier. Like we are all innately creative. So when
Yeah.
we give people the time, the space, and supplies to tap into the creativity, everyone buys in. So what surprised me was that I guess, I mean, that it works so well, right? Like, it actually works. This experiment of mine.
You saw the success of that experience and in your framing of deprioritizing people, you said that it was, you weren't paying attention to the potential customers and potential clients and what the problems they're really trying to solve. You get this experience of, okay, now I see it. Everyone is creative. There is a there. There's people are that seal who was a crank is not letting go of the Legos. What was the next step that you did for your business to kind of steer into that, recognize that how to really maximize what you were that insight?
So, like, the revamping of the business to work smart advantage and focusing on the priorities of business, right? They want to develop people, they want stronger teams, a strategy, and to look at the things that I could offer. For me, it was learning development, like soft skills learning development, and just taking workshops I had done earlier in my career in other organizations and taking that and looking and be like, okay, well, I can teach mentoring, coaching teams from a binder like I used to do, or I can insert these creative tools into it. And at first, it really was the same creative tools I was using before, but except I would teach the workshop, and then maybe at the end we might do something called a creative. I used to call them creative art projects, and now I call them creative artifacts. So create a reminder of the work we did through a tactile way. And then I started going out and discovering different creative methodologies like Lego Serious Play, like the creative problem solving process. So I built my own skills so I could take those skills and not deliver them directly as I was taught them, but be able to incorporate them into the work I do.
I love it. And where in organizations were you focused? Were you focused on senior leaders? Were you focused on everywhere? Did you start one place and expand?
So I started working with senior leaders, or like I said, the leadership teams, and in the sense of like the learning, the leadership development. But I also
Yeah.
did team development programs where I work with everybody. Right, I do a lot of
Yeah.
off-sites and retreats where we got to work with everybody.
Yeah.
With this work in creativity and bringing creativity in the workplace, what I have found though is that it is the leadership that needs to buy into it first, right? Because it's a lot easier for a leader to come in and say, "Hey, we're going to start using this process called creative problem solving, or we're going to start solving our problems with Lego," than it would be for a middle manager to take that information and try to move that up in the organization.
Surely. And how did you tackle that? Did you continue to just train yourself? Or did you bring in additional facilitators with other skill sets? What was your approach to help get from the influence of the senior leaders, but throughout the rest of the organization?
I mean, it's still something that I work on today, right? So oftentimes people will bring me in for one thing, and it might be have you come in and talk about conflict management and resolution for the senior leadership team. So that's sort of like the way in is a leadership development program. And then I start talking about and we start using the creative tools throughout the program. And that's sort of like my into to and I always try to share a little bit about like why creativity is important and why being a creative leader is important. So it's still a work in progress, right? To try to be able to understand it and value it enough to say, okay, yes, we want it to implement this at the top and trickle it down.
Yeah. What has been So we've got the Honor Foundation and the SEALs actually do like Legos.
Yes.
Um, it's not just Marines who like crayons. As you continue to expand this in, what are some other good surprises that you've had that have really reinforced an understanding of the problems that corporate leaders are facing?
Well, what's interesting is that I mean, when I think early on in my work, there was not a value of creativity, right? People have been like, "Oh, we don't need that." And I think the pandemic changed that because people's like, "Oh, we all need to be creative. We all need to pivot. We all need to do something different and innovate." So when I first started this work, it was a lot of, you know, having to educate people on the value of creativity in the workplace before I could even sell what I do. And now I feel that there is a deeper understanding of the value of innovation and how innovation comes from creativity and that creativity is everyone's job, right? Like for organizations to move forward, it's not just about the leaders telling people what to do, it's how to get everyone to be more creative and innovative so the best ideas make it to the finish line.
What are some indications of an organization that is really doing a good job of empowered creativity throughout the organization?
So yeah, so signs that would be that people at all levels of your organization feel free to share their voice, right? They're open to sharing their ideas because they know they're not going to be put down or judged. So for me, like that is the biggest one: is are people willing to share their ideas because it's a collaborative environment? They're not going to feel judged for their ideas, and their ideas are welcome.
Yeah. Where do leaders get it wrong most often or most easiest to correct in implementing these things?
Think it's so easy as a leader to be busy, right?
Sure.
And to not allow the room and the space for this to happen. I always talk about this concept of creative chaos. Like, so as you start implementing these mindsets and skill sets and tools of creative leadership, they might take a little more time than you telling people what to do, right?
Yeah.
Or going with the first idea that comes to the table.
Yeah.
So this idea of creative chaos is every time you apply these creative tools, you're going to face what I call creative chaos, a time where
Yeah.
it looks like this isn't working, is taking too much time, nobody's getting it, and oftentimes people make a U-turn and do things the way they've always done it. So I show this slide that is literally like, okay, I'm telling you right now, you're going to face this time where it looks all jumbled up. Don't
Yep.
make that U-turn. Keep going because on the
Yeah.
other side of creative chaos is that innovation, better teamwork, better
Yep.
ideas.
Yeah. That's powerful. You also shared, and I mentioned this in the intro, of course, a really powerful story around your mom and the other refugee women, and of course, I think you said this is the centerpiece of the book as well. And I'd love to hear not just that story, but how how that has intersected with the other work that you've done in terms of prioritizing people.
Like I mentioned, a Vietnamese refugee. I came here at 2 years old in 1975 with my family, and our first home was at Camp Pendleton Marine Base in San Diego. We were there for a few months, where honestly, the Marines there had to use their curiosity and creativity too. It was the first
Sure.
time in U.S. history that military bases housed refugees.
Yeah.
So it was like they had 36 hours to be like, how do we do this? Right?
Yeah.
And they did it. And then we were transferred to a refugee integration center in Northern California called Hope Village. And that was civilian run. And it was there that, there was a Hollywood movie star that volunteered her name is Tippi Hedren, most famously known for her starring role in Alfred Hitchcock's movie The Birds. And I always like to say for the younger generation, she's Melanie Griffith's mom, Dakota Johnson's grandmother. So now I reference who she is. So she came to the camp, and her role that she took on was, "Let's help these women find a career in their new country." So she has started this typing and sewing class. My mom and 19 other people signed up, and, imagine being Tippi Hedren, Hollywood movie star, had, like, brought in typewriters, brought in sewing machines, brought in the teachers. These 20 women are sitting there typing and sewing, but they had this curiosity about something very different than typing and sewing. They saw her long red manicured nails, and that sparked a curiosity for them. And when I think about that moment, I think, how wild is it that Tippy could have just easily ignored that curiosity, right? And said, "Thank you, keep typing and sewing." And where would we be now? But she did. She paid attention to that curiosity. She paused. She paid attention, and she took on. I mean, naturally, these creative leadership characteristics like all ideas matter. Good ideas can come from anyone. Even though I believe that I set this all up, doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So she paused enough to pay attention to that, and they started asking questions like, "What if? How might we? How might we become licensed manicurists?" And those questions came with some challenges, like they didn't
So,
speak English and they didn't have money to pay tuition.
yep.
But rather than focusing on the challenge, they focused on the opportunity and the possibility. So Tippy first brought in her manicurist from LA to teach them how to do a basic manicure. And then she walked them all down to the local beauty school, Citrus Heights Beauty College, and told the owners, "I have these 20 women. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Can you help us?" And they said yes. So after 400 hours and 10 weeks of schooling, my mom and her friends became the first 20 licensed Vietnamese manicurists in the United States. And, if you live in the United States, you know that most manicurists are Vietnamese, right? 60% across the country, 90% here in California. And it's all based on that story. It's based on like a leader following curiosity and believing that all ideas matter and we should pursue other ideas than my own.
That's right. I actually did not know the statistics that you just,
Oh, yeah. Right.
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's an
Um,
$8.3 billion industry now.
oh my gosh.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
That is absolutely what, and yeah, distilling it down to that one, recognizing all ideas matter, good ideas can come from anywhere, and that instinct or generosity or curiosity, the combination of all of those to jump and respond and follow that thread. I love that.
Yeah, because I think about how many curiosities have tapped us on the shoulder that we just ignored because 'cause we're too busy, right, to pause and pay attention. So I think in the book, I talk about that framework of following curiosity, number 1, pausing long enough to pay attention, and then being able to ask those questions like, "How might I? What if?" Despite your own insecurities, your own doubts, the challenges,
Sure.
and then just to take that one small step forward and see what opens up for you. And I
Yeah.
want to say, like, when you talk about the connection, you know, I talked about, like, how I grew up earlier about, being
Yeah.
from a family of, like, it was really strict, like, it was all about education and academics, and, my parents always told me by their words, "Here's what you need to do with your life. Yeah, go to school, get a graduate degree, get a job, work, and then have fun when you retire." So those are the words I heard, but what I saw them do every day out of necessity was follow curiosity with creative action.
Okay. Yep.
Right? I saw them because whatever happened, it was like, "Okay, how do we curious about this, and what do we need to do to move forward?" So and when I first quit my corporate job, started this business of creativity, I thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, my parents are gonna be so disappointed, like, I'm not following what they said," but in reality, what I'm doing is I'm following what I saw them do every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did that, how'd that conversation go?
Well, I still think my mom thinks I'm a doctor.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah, I'm not really sure.
Okay. Have you talked to her about the insight around Tippi Hedren's curiosity and that story, and how did she respond to it? If it's not about you, how does she respond to the connection?
I say that just jokingly, but she knows what I do for a living, and, she doesn't completely understand it, but she knows, like, the keynotes about her story. So she's very proud of that, and, the fact that they all come around now that what she was able to accomplish out of necessity, I now get to share with the world, out of joy and because I get to, rather than have to. Yeah.
The way you described, the learning process, that you did and lived through the things they said, but you also more deeply incorporated what you observed them do. There's an inverse lesson in that for leaders, I think, that shows up in a lot of what you've talked about as well, and that's it's not enough to just say, "Go be curious," or say, "We are an expressive, artistic, all ideas matter." The behavior is far more important, and the behavior of the leaders is far more important in modeling, the desired outcomes.
I absolutely agree because like there's so many companies you can walk into and part of the values is either creativity or curiosity or innovation. And then you look around and you're like, well, where is it? Like how's it lived out?
Yeah, I regularly say values are what's written on the wall. Culture is the
Yeah,
sum total of actions and decisions.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like what you said. I listened to your podcast on Joe Bogdan's podcast.
Yeah.
The term culture on purpose,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Joe and I had a great conversation.
Like creativity on purpose, innovation on purpose.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, yeah.
put effort into it.
Yeah, on purpose is so important in all of these pieces, because on purpose, I have found reluctance to do things on purpose is often a hedging of bets and a worry if it's not the right thing. But not doing things on purpose leaves just a lot of churn and spun and wasted energy in
So
not
sure.
going after it. One other thing that I really that I saw as a true through line for all of your experience and stories was the place of mentors and advocates. Whether it was your coach who had the branding experience and gave that insight, or whether it was Tippy and your mom. These things aren't found purely alone, and seeking out that support and perspective is often, it appears to me, is often a critical through line for that. How does that land for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the idea of not doing it alone really plays into the work I do and plays into
Yeah,
like my whole life story, really. And whether it's an official mentorship, relationship, or just seeking out that collaboration. Right. So I think in my world, I always think in the work I do, I look at who in my network, who can I meet, who are going to be great collaborators, who can add to this. I was listening to, Claude Silver. She is the chief heart officer of, VaynerMedia, and she was talking about whether it's a small business or large corporation, people talk about cultural fit. She's like, "I prefer cultural add," right? Like how to like bringing in people who are gonna add to what you're doing rather than just fitting into what you're doing, which I think is, like, really spoke to me.
a thought just occurred to me. This isn't in the normal flow of questions, but I regularly hear in terms of AI coming around, that it suppresses creativity or that its effects, concerns about its effects on creativity. What are your thoughts around the near and midterm future in the work that you're doing and and the place of creativity and whether or how AI being involved with that will affect it?
I mean, I think it's interesting too because I do use very I mean, trust me, I'm not an expert in any of it, but
Of
I do
course.
use AI to help me filter my thoughts, help me expand my thoughts. So just as we talked about just a minute ago about this collaboration with other people,
Yeah.
I look at as AI as a collaborator, right? So like it can help me broaden my thoughts, give me new ideas, and yeah, I just feel like creativity is so innately human. I have, some people say like, "Oh, AI is not creative." I don't think that's true. I think AI is actually also creative, but it doesn't
Yeah.
have and or, right? Or is that
Right.
how you think? Like, yeah, it's like we can both be creative and we can add to
Yeah.
each other's creativity.
Yeah.
And yeah, looking almost like as AI as a partner and a collaborator.
Yeah. That aligns very, very much with our approach on human-centered AI use, but AI, think of it as a teammate as well. So, all right. So not the death of human creativity. unless we
Yeah,
do that on purpose. So
that's right.
has anything else come up for you around this conversation? Anything else? Any other insights before we dive into the lightning-ish round?
I would just like to hone in on this idea of creative leadership and creative problem solving.
Yeah.
And Lego Serious Play, you want to talk about Lego Serious Play a
Yes,
little?
absolutely. Yeah, I want to know. Yeah, I want a clean, full description of what Lego Serious Play is because when my kid and I are playing with Legos, it can get a little serious. But I don't think that's what you mean.
No, the Lego Serious Play, the way I see it and know of it is Lego Serious Play is an actual facilitation methodology that was started at the Lego group, trademark, registered, all whatever it is. So they were going through some strategic challenges in the late 90s, brought in some specialists, be like, okay, what's going on here? And what they found was they couldn't get the executives to think outside that left brain analytical thinking, and they couldn't think creatively. So they came up with this process called Lego Serious Play, where they took the tools they already have, clearly, and they started this process where it was about building metaphors, sharing ideas, and leveling the playing field because everyone in the room, you'll be asked a challenge question, like build a models represent how to solve this challenge, whatever it might be. And then everyone at the table has to build. And then everyone at the table shares. And what makes that different is number one, the idea of everyone having an idea, because oftentimes in the corporate environment or in any environment, the leader may ask a question and you have those one or two people who will share ideas, right? And when they share the ideas, the ideas are vetted right away. No, that can't happen. Yes, and whatever it might be. So through Lego Serious Play, everyone at the table shares. Everyone at the table builds. Everyone gets what their time to share, and then their idea gets pushed to the center of the table. So now you've got maybe the CEO's idea in the center of the table. You have the intern's idea at the center of the table, and now there's collaboration with the models. And there's something about building a model and sharing what you've built in your hands, something tactile, that
Yep.
makes it different than sharing, just off the top of your head.
Yep.
People are willing to share more. They're
Yep.
able to share more, and now it makes it easier to collaborate.
Yeah.
So some of the benefits of Lego Serious Play, like I said, is all ideas make it to the table. That is better collaboration, and you level the playing field so everyone has a chance to have their voice heard.
Love it. That's excellent.
Yeah,
And you get to play with Legos.
and you get to play with Lego. It's fun, where you're solving problems. And it's fun.
You ready for our lightning-ish round?
Let's do it.
All right. Vaughn, what was your first job?
My very first job was dial a gift, which I guess
Oh,
is creative too. I made balloon arches. Yeah, dial a gift where I made balloon arches and just like I don't know what else. Oh, wrap gifts.
oh wow. Okay. That's a core skill that I never really got down well. There was a period of time where I took pride in not being good at wrapping gifts, but I think after doing a lot of learning and reflection, that was just like armoring up and not wanting to put the effort into it. What's one leadership you've learned a lot of leadership skills along the way, and you got a great repertoire. What's one leadership skill that you wish that you'd learned earlier?
Let me think about the ones I talk about a lot. I mean, the idea that all ideas matter, what I teach, right? All ideas matters. Like I feel like as a leader, when you think about leadership, oftentimes you think about the pressure of like, I have to know the answer. I have to know it all. And that's just not true, right? Like the answers might be in the room from someone else. So like so to ask those questions and understand that good ideas can come from anyone in your organization.
On the other side of the coin, what's the biggest myth about leadership that you've heard?
The biggest myth about leadership, let me go with, I guess it's in line with what I just said, right?
Yeah,
The biggest myth is like you Oh, okay, so I'm gonna tell a story instead. How about this?
please. Yeah,
So, when I started my business, I was so intimidated by anyone who had a C-suite, anyone in the
sure.
C-suite. Um, so I guess this idea that and I don't even know if this answers your question, but the fact that, like, the C-suite and these leaders are different than us, right? They're at an elevated level, and when that broke for me was I was visiting my friend, his name is Dan, and he had opened up this distillery in Bardstown, a huge distillery. He's the CFO. I went to visit him and his family. We went to dinner there at the restaurant, and I could see how everyone was treating him. He's the CFO of this company, right? And I'm like, that's how I look, right? Like that's how I look when I go to the C-suite. I look like I'm a little needy, like I'm a desperate, like whatever it might be. Like I was like, I'm in all of them. And then I looked at Dan, like, it's just Dan. right? Dan used to, when we were at Brown University, he used to make me a Cheeto crusted fried fish. But really, I love to go like there's nothing to be intimidated by, right?
Wow.
Like it's just someone else's Dan,
Yep.
and that really changed the way I approach leaders,
Yep.
which made it more personable, made it more relatable.
Yeah.
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 So I'm so
That's
glad
a,
this is called lightning-ish because that was not a lightning fast.
oh,
Lightning.
yeah. No, usually it's me who takes it off the rails. So I'm really glad to have you as company here.
Great. I can help you with taking things off the rail very easily.
We talked about some really good professional advice you received over time. What's the worst professional advice you've ever received?
Okay, so that one more is around like being an entrepreneur and pricing.
Oh,
People, when I
sure.
first started my business, people said, "Don't ever, don't ever discount. Don't ever discount." Um, and I took that to heart. But then I realized it's like, oh, you kind of have to, as an entrepreneur, go through the motions and do things until and learn for yourself. So when people do ask me about that now, like as I mentor other entrepreneurs, and when they ask about price, I'm like, do whatever makes you feel it feels right to you. Right, because then what happened for me was I would discount, and sometimes it would feel right, but then it got to a point where I was like, "Oh, that does not feel good anymore." So I had to learn for myself. It's almost like you kind of have to go through the process. So yeah, so again, that for me it was more of like a personal learning moment in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, the intention behind do not discount. I've read that in a few different places.
Yeah.
I can understand, but any sort of advice that is just that simple, three words is taken just as gospel is troublesome.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I love your version of that. All right, we always like to ask our guests, what's a media recommendation? A book, a show, a podcast, a game, anything. But the only catch is it cannot be leadership or business related. What are you watching? What makes you you?
Okay, I'm watching TikTok. A particular Firestone glass. I picked up stained glass making about 2 years ago, and what I didn't realize at the time is that my college roommate, Debbie Firestone, actually has been making stained glass since college, and she's so good at it now. She has a business, called Firestone Glass, and I reached out to her the other day, go like, "How do you make this?" And she referred me to her TikTok channel, Firestone Glass, so now I have all the tips and tools I need
Wow.
to do my stained glass making.
Oh, how cool. I just realized there's a little bit of a trick of asking someone who is so creative in their business that they can't give a business or leadership thing, but I think that cleanly falls into side projects and hobbies. And so, no, that's very cool. And I love that it's like a personal connection too.
Yeah, isn't that great? Because sometimes again, it's one of those things again where you're like, oh, you look at things and there's this awe about the
Yeah.
person, and maybe you won't reach out, or oh, I guess that's I mean, this has nothing to do with anything we just talked about. But the other thing that I've gotten very good at is just being audacious in reaching out and meeting people. And
Yeah.
that's really led to a lot of great friendships, business partnerships. The same idea, like everyone is just a human being, and reach out. You don't hear back from them, don't take it personally. But I've just had so many great connections just by being like, that's interesting. I'm going to reach out.
That's amazing. Yeah, and that one is hugely important and huge. I consider myself a fairly bold person, and I struggle with that every single time. About coming up with all the reasons why they wouldn't want to talk to me, as opposed to just give it a shot and don't be attached to an outcome.
Yes, that's great. Don't be attached to the outcome.
Oh, I love it. All right. For everyone who's been listening, Lai-DuMone is a creative keynote speaker and CEO of Worksmart Advantage who helps leaders and their teams turn curiosity into a strategic problem-solving tool. Van, we're going to have all this, of course, linked in our show notes, but where can people find you, and what else do you want our listeners to check out?
Sure. So find me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting information and content on LinkedIn. You are also free to just email me and reach out to me at VAN at worksmartadvantage.com. And my latest curiosity is like, what if I write a children's book? So that's coming out probably in September. It's being illustrated and edited right now. And
Oh,
it's around
wonderful. Oh
curiosity.
my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Van, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, it was really fun.
And for everyone else, follow, like, and subscribe to Vet on People on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you want to learn more about how we think about leadership at Euda, visit euda.io/executive coaching. I'm Keegan Evans, and we bet on people.